Do you feel like you have enough knowledge to vote in 6 or 12 months? Do you know who the village president of Pewaukee is? Did you know that Jeff Knutson is the village president of Pewaukee? Do you have a deep knowledge about if you are a Democrat, Libertarian, Socialist, or Republican? How often do you think about local, state, and national elections? What is your knowledge base for voting? Also, does your level of responsibility at 16 years old demand that you also have a right to vote? Until 1971, the voting age in America was 21. A debate over lowering it to 18 began during World War II when President Franklin D. Roosevelt decreased the military draft age to 18. Young people were very upset. How could they get drafted into war and not have a voice in it? This upset feeling hit fever pitch during the Vietnam War when many people were against the U.S. fighting in Vietnam's Civil War. From 1954 to 1974, 58,200 members of the U.S. Armed Forces were lost or killed. Think about how terrifying it would have been during this time to have to wait for your draft number to be called and not having a voice in the constitution of the war. The Vietnam War was the catalyst for young people demanding that they had the right to vote so that they would have a say in their futures. So does this argument still hold up for 16-year-olds today? Should 16-year-olds also demand the right to vote, just like 18-year-olds did, in order to have a say in the Vietnam War that they were being drafted into? Today, I will argue these points. First, in regards to a 16-year-old's knowledge to vote. According to the University of Rochester Medical Center, the rational part of a teen's brain is not fully developed and won't be until the age 25 or so. In fact, recent research has been found that adults and teen brains work differently. Adults think with the prefrontal cortex, the brain's most rational part. This is the part of the brain that responds to situations with good judgment and awareness of long-term consequences, while 16-year-olds process information with the amygdala, which is, you've guessed it, the emotional part. Now you might say, well, adults are emotional too. I've heard all of the political ads, seen the political signs for the 2020 election. You can't tell me that voting is not based on emotion. My response would be, that is true. Voting is emotional. Yet, the difference is that while emotions are heightened during an important election, that does not change the fact that adults' brains process information differently. While the decision can still be emotional, adults' brains still process the information about voting through the prefrontal cortex, or the brain's most rational part. 16-year-olds' brains might take an already very emotional event and then process it through their emotional parts of their brains, with the impact of exponentially increasing their emotion. Why is this a big deal, you might ask? Well, advertisers, lobbyists, and companies might use that unchecked emotion to steer our country away from the rational facts and decision-making. Secondly, with the brain still developing at 16, many things are still being learned. That is a problem also because voting can make a huge difference in the lives of others. For those under 18 years old, still legally a minor, this might be too young of an age to shoulder this responsibility. While there are many responsibilities in teens' lives, such as taking the ACT, SAT, working and balancing school, sports, homework, and a social life, do these responsibilities warrant the right to vote? Some may argue that anyone who pays taxes and anyone who works should be granted the right to vote. Perhaps, but then what about the rationality of those voting decisions? Would 16-year-olds have enough content to understand who they were voting for and why? The right to vote has been fought for before by young people, women, and African American people. If 16-year-olds want the right to vote, we will need to fight for it. We will need to show that we have rational thoughts based on facts and experience. We will need to demonstrate that our voices do matter and that we will positively impact the future of our country.